In today's episode of the WattBuy Presents podcast, I have an interesting guest here with me today. I'm with Thomas Amegadzie, and he is hailing over as the Director of Growth at WattBuy. And WattBuy is an interesting company. It's, it says online, it's a one-of-a-kind energy marketplace, all with the goal to lower electricity bills. So we're going to be learning who is benefiting the most from what WattBuy has to offer, how they're positioned in the market, but also how Thomas is thinking about growth for the company. So we're going to be exploring channels, as you know it from the WattBuy Presents podcast today. And in the end, the rapid fire questions as always. So Thomas, welcome to the show.
Hi, how's it going, Lucas?
Very good, appreciate it. So thanks for hopping on, being part of WattBuy Presents. Give us that 360 overview. What is WattBuy all about?
Yeah, so I'd be happy to. WattBuy is an energy intelligence company, and then WattBuy.com is all about helping people save money on their electricity bills by switching them to cheaper, cleaner, renewable energy-based electricity plans with just the ease of a few clicks. Mm-hmm. And so right now we service deregulated marketplaces in the United States. And what does that mean? So regulated marketplaces are ones where utility companies own all the infrastructure from generation of electricity to the metering in homes to consumers. And so these are typically kind of like monopoly marketplaces. And so there's prices are standard and set by the state utility commission. And then in deregulated marketplaces, you have other energy players that are allowed to use the same infrastructure to deliver electricity to households. So in this case, you have more competition, more choice, usually cheaper prices. And then you've got these renewable energy partners that are able to provide energy from wind, solar, and hydro onto the grid so that they're able to, get to households just like the larger utility companies. Mm-hmm. And so I mentioned, those deregulated marketplaces. In America, those are 12 states, the bigger ones being about, Texas, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, Massachusetts. And, these 12 states cover about 60 million households in America.
Very good. That gives us an overview. So is there, for everybody who's listening in, obviously there's a big B2C angle. Is there a B2B angle, B2C? Like, can you tell us a little bit more sort of how is that it's structured as, in terms of the end clients at the end?
Yeah, so I can talk about that and kind of the value that we're generating and who benefits most, right? So I mentioned the B2C aspect, helping households switch to cheaper renewable energy-based electricity plans. But then we're also getting a lot of this really interesting data about real-time energy usage in households that help us develop new products in our suite, and then also are interesting for strategic business partners in either their own products and displaying this information or for their own business insights, right? So yeah, I would say B2C, it's all about cheaper options. And, that's really tangible now, during the pandemic and especially after inclement weather, people are really trying to figure out how can they lock into lower rates for their, home bills. And then you have the other side of this, which is a sustainability focus, right? And so we are a very simple way to lower one's carbon footprint and help meet sustainability goals, which in the end, we're all benefiting.
Yep, that makes a whole lot of sense. Now, you as a head of growth, will you have a B2B or B2C head, or do you looking at both angles? What is sort of where you're focusing on that will help me also, obviously, to sort of laser focus on any of the two sides?
Yeah, so I mean, as our company grows, right, and we introduce a suite of products, we need to have both, right? And our B2B is going to develop and mature over time. And we definitely have some of that going on right now. But my focus coming in here as director of growth is really more so on the B2C side and getting, more consumers to switch to renewable energies and to be able to, make this data for those B2B products later on much more valuable.
Gotcha. How do people hear about WattBuy? So what is the typical, client acquisition channels that you're currently using or that you have in mind for future clients down the line?
Yeah, it's funny, when you think about, how do clients find us, right? And I'm glad you asked, because it's interesting. People don't want to think about their energy provider or really any utility for that matter. It's not something you really want to come back to. Mm-hmm. And so for us, it's really important to meet our customers where and when they are thinking about their energy usage and making those decisions. So, we've really only just begun to tell our story this past year. And we've been doing, traditional digital marketing, partnerships, PR, and word of mouth. And so right now the focus is heavily digital, but we're going to be trying to meet our customers on all channels where they're, in those key decision moments, deciding between saving money on electricity and, their carbon footprint.
Mhm. You mentioned it's highly digital, the sort of the journey that people are going through. How do you think about the website? Like, what role does the website play? WattBuy.com? Like, if thinking about the overall positioning, and we can maybe deep dive a little bit into this, but maybe give us first like a high level overview. How do you think about the website?
Yeah, I mean, I think about the website as like a really important brand touch point and conversion touch point. It has to serve as both. And because again, like we are in like this is a product where people come in a moment of need, and it's rather one-off, right? WattBuy.com. And so it's super important like that we're making use of all the traffic that comes to us. And to say that is just also another part of the overall piece of our growth strategy and conversion funnel. And it's really it's a very important piece, but it also is just one piece of when I'm thinking about the overall growth strategy. And so when I think about my growth strategy, it needs to be very like the way it should be, data driven, right? And so I've always thought of growth and marketing as kind of a sweet science. And it's really important to understand customer psychology, industry trends, and have a gut, position and like steer yourself in the right direction. But at the end of the day, I want our strategy to be as close to a math problem as possible. I want to be able to have inputs, top of funnel, have, spend lead to impressions, visits, clicks, conversions, and, churn. And I really want it to be a math problem where I have strategic levers I can pull and manipulate the outcome as I need and see fit for, healthy growth. And so, marketers and like growth professionals, we're not hired to get it right away. You're hired to have logic in how you're going to learn things, and you're supposed to fail along the way. And so it's like I've always positioned our strategy as making these a really tight and sound testing roadmap of the most important prioritized learnings that'll have the biggest business impact first, right? And then we're starting lower funnel and working our way up so that as we do these higher funnel and like, I guess, like less trackable, bigger spend channels, we're converting them at the bottom of the funnel as efficiently as possible. And if you don't mind, like I like to touch on the other side of growth for WattBuy as well. It's not just on the acquisition side as well, right? It's also a company and what do we offer? And then so going back to that suite of products I mentioned, I can't get into too much detail about the upcoming product roadmap, but you can kind of imagine the type of services and products we're going to be able to spin up and offer with all this valuable real-time energy data that we're collecting from our customers and plugging it into external sources. And our ability and our learnings only mature over time the more we get, right? And then similarly, you can kind of imagine what type of companies would have interest and could make use of such real-time energy usage data, and which ones would actually use it for strategic insights for their own business offerings.
That makes a whole lot of sense. It's interesting that you brought up the sort of, basically that equation, right, of visitors, or even further, even earlier, like clicks, visitors, conversions, churn. I'm curious, and that does not necessarily only apply to, your time at WattBuy, just like in general. What have you learned? What have you come across, like interesting methods, tools, approaches in order to optimize what you're getting to the website in order to convert them? Anything that you've picked up in your journey as sort of as a growth marketer?
I think that it's important just to have sound as a growth marketer. I think it's always been important to be able to communicate like how we're going to achieve growth to those around you, especially. And so having that ability also kind of lets you be your own internal sounding board in that you're kind of approaching things in a methodical way that's going to have the best business impact, first. And then getting kind of technical about it, right? I think that I'd learned to trust manual bidding more than letting the, I guess, optimizations and pixels take over. It's a great place to start for some people, and I understand that. But if you're, I think, like a certain level of growth professional marketer, you really need to have faith in setting your own bids on keywords, ad groups, and then building up the infrastructure needed to really manage those with the intricate care that they need.
Interesting. Very cool. Yeah, super interesting sort of, to learn about what you guys are doing, how you're thinking about growth, which lever you're pulling at growth. And I think actually a lot of marketers can take, a lot away from this, from sort of trying to actually bring that overall setup into like a math problem, as you were saying. As I mentioned, I would like to switch gears a little bit and move from sort of what you guys, have been up to in terms of growth and the product side of things, and learn a little bit more about yourself, Thomas. So maybe tell me, there's so much content out there on growth marketing. You could be reading all day long, but there, in a way, you have to filter. You have to go to certain places only. Maybe tell me, how do you keep on educating yourself, and how do you filter, marketing stuff that you could read out there?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, honestly, it's okay. So this kind of like, I had this thought the other day where I think of myself as, still young millennial, but I felt old as a millennial for the first time when I realized that LinkedIn is my new favorite social media platform. It's just great. I think my friends are posting interesting things there, and I do pick up different tips and tricks, and it's interesting to see how people are talking about, attribution, display advertising, view through, and things like that. At the same time, it's funny, like, as I consider myself like a PPC expert, and I go to Google, and if I have a question on something, I Google it, and rankings do matter. And if you're ranked high, I verify some sources, but rankings matter for a reason. And there's a lot of shared information now on the web, on the internet that wasn't there when I first got into my career. It's kind of like Google's kind of like a Stack Overflow, I feel, for the marketer these days. And then elsewhere, would I look? Yeah, I guess that might.
That's it. Yeah, no worries. Very good. I think that's enough meat for people to dig into. Since we're slowly coming to an end of the interview, I would love to jump into our rapid fire questions. They're a bit of a surprise for our clients, but very well known for the regular listeners. So you ready for those?
I'm ready.
Very good. What's the last book you listened to, or the last book you read, or the last podcast you listened to?
Yeah, I will say that on that front, like, I think that audiobooks are great and you can listen to books, but I take exception when people say they've read a book when they actually listen to audiobooks. So yes, so the last book I actually read was Amazon Unbound. It was on the WattBuy book club list.
Very cool. What is one single thing your company is focused on the most at the moment?
Growth.
If there would be no boundaries in technology, right? Everything is possible. What's the one thing you would fix for your role?
Multi-touch attribution.
There you go. That's very clear. What's the last thing that kept you awake at night about the company?
So many more ideas. There's a lot of work to do, and I'm excited.
Very good. And for the very last question, right, I would love to sort of, go back to do a bit of time travel, right? And let's say we go back to the days of Columbia University, right? We go all the way back. So now we're heading out of formal education, at least the first part of formal education. And for your career in marketing and growth, what would be the one advice you would give yourself?
I would say to dive into auction-based platforms earlier, and do not be afraid of your own voice in the room. Just because you're an undergrad and just coming fresh into the workforce doesn't mean that you don't have a valuable contribution to give to a company of any size, and to have confidence in that.
Very cool. Thomas, I really appreciate you took the time with us today to be a guest on PathWork Presents. I want to give you the very last word. If somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed about WattBuy, what's the one thing that they should remember?
Yeah, I guess like the one thing I would want people to remember is that WattBuy is here to help people take control of their electricity usage. So, especially now in a time of high inflation, people are looking to save money any way they can. And one way to easily do that is to lock in a lower energy price. And then in a time where we need to be having an eye focus on sustainability, this is a really simple way to lower your carbon footprint while saving money.
Thanks a lot for being a guest on PathWork Presents.
Thank you.